All right, here we go. Today we have former San Quentin prison guard and later undercover detective Darren Monahan. During his time as a CEO in San Quentin, he dealt with high-profile prisoners like Charles Manson, Crips founder Stanley Tookie Williams, the Night Stalker Richard Ramirez, and others. Darren, welcome to Vlad TV.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Well, you grew up in the Bay Area.
Yes.
San Jose.
Yes, sir.
Now, you graduate high school, and at one point you thought about being a cop?
It had crossed my mind about becoming a cop. My brother had wanted to be a fireman. I thought, well, I'll try and be a cop. And I took a couple of classes in college, and then it kind of phased out for a minute where I didn't really think much about it anymore. And I started hanging around a couple guys that were into the motorcycle clubs and into Harleys. And so I hung around a couple guys that were associated with the Hells Angels for a little while.
And then one day, you were at the Santa Clara County Fairgrounds, and there was a recruitment booth for San Quentin prison.
Yep.
Up until that point, being a cop and a prison guard, it's similar, but it's not the same thing. I would much rather be a cop than a prison guard, to be honest. No offense.
Right.
So What happened next?
So we're at the Santa Clara County Fairgrounds, and we're walking around, and there's a big booth, one officer there that has a bunch of pictures of San Quentin. Mm-hmm. And it looks just like on TV, and so I'm looking at the pictures. Thought it was kind of fascinating, the old buildings and everything. And he had asked me, hey, do you want to work there? I said, no, I don't want to work there. And I'm with two of my friends that were associated with the Hells Angels. And I go, I don't want to work there. And I start to walk off, and he goes, well, wait a minute. You need to talk to me, How do you know you don't want to work there? You don't even know how much money we make. Mm-hmm. And my one buddy turns and looks at him and says, hey, why don't you leave the kid alone? He said he doesn't want to work there. Well, I stopped and said, well, how much do you make? He goes, well, we'll start you off at $1,800 a month. And back then, that was a lot of money in '86. And actually, it was '85 at the time. And so I said, okay, well, I'll fill out the application. So I turned around, I filled out the application real quick, turned it in, and kind of forgot about it. And then the phone rang at the home one time, and it was them asking me to come take a written test. So I wasn't too sure about it, and I was hanging out with these guys, going to the gym with them, and going to a friend's muffler shop, and at the muffler shop, I said, hey, they sent me a thing to be a correctional officer, take the test. So I don't think I'm going to take it. And they said, well, take the test and see where it goes. So I do, and I pass the test, and then I'm going to do I think the next thing was an oral board, a physical agility test and an oral board. And I said, well, I'm not sure I want to do that. It's kind of like being a snitch almost, And they had talked me into it. They said, no, you need to do that. You need to take that job. That job has benefits. It's going to pay well. It's got a retirement system. You hang around here. The club's just going to take stuff from you. They're not going to support you. You're going to be supporting them. And I deep down inside, I think. They kind of saw me different and knew that I probably didn't have it in me to do what they do, to go through all the stuff they do to earn their patches. And so I followed through. And then they had to wait till I turned 21 to send me to the academy. So I believe it was May 1986, I went to the Corrections Academy for 6 weeks in Galt, California.
Okay, so you go to the academy, and then you have your first day in San Quentin prison, which... This is before Pelican Bay and the Supermaxes. So San Quentin, growing up in the Bay, was kind of considered the worst of the worst. Is that fair?
Correct, yes.
Okay. So you're a 21-year-old kid. Now you're a correctional officer in the worst prison in America. How does that start off?
It didn't start off too good, actually. Back, like you said, back then, Corcoran, I think, was just opening, but it was just Folsom and San Quentin had the worst inmates. Mm-hmm. None of the other prisons were open yet. I went through it was either a 1 or 2 week orientation where you do get to go to different sections and learn what they do. But my first job that I actually had to work was in the chow hall, in the kitchen. And it started at 3 a.m. You go there at 3 a.m, there's nobody there. So you go to key control, you get the keys, and you walk into the chow hall, you're the only officer working. I have no idea what I'm doing. I don't have a clue. So I asked the guy in key control, what do I do? He said, ask the free staff what you do. and they'll show you what to do. I said, okay. So I found the free cook. He was a cook. And when I say free, he's not an inmate. He's a civilian staff member. And he introduced me to a inmate that was serving life in prison for killing somebody, and said, here, I can't remember his name for the life of me. He'll show you what to do. So I listened to him, and he took me into the hot room where they kept all the knives and all the tools you need to cook the breakfast. And he explained to me each inmate had a different kind of card or ID card based on their security levels. Certain inmates you couldn't give knives to because they're known to stab people, right? And he proceeded to show me his ID card, and he says, if they have an ID card like this, they can't be around the knives. And I'm sitting there thinking, you're in here with me with all these knives, you know? This is kind of weird. So he said, the other thing you need to do is put the sugar out. Now, people who've been in prison, they know sugar is like gold. At least back then it was. You know, they'd make Pruno and stuff out of it. And so I didn't know any better, and I'd put all the sugar out. About, I don't know, hour or so goes, and the cook comes to me and asks where the sugar is. Well, that inmate got me. I said, I put it out already. And he goes, man, that's the only sugar we have. Now you're going to have to explain to all the inmates why they don't have sugar for their breakfast. Well, I didn't know any better. But we got through that day. And it was rough on me, because when you walk in that place, it looks just like it does on TV or in the movies. There's murals all over. The place is huge. They got gunmen up walking around on the gun walks. And being 21 years old, at that time, I was the youngest person in that prison working out of 1,200 employees.
Oh, okay.
And so it was kind of scary. I was a decent-sized kid. I was a big kid. I'm always just like lifting weights for something to do. But the next day was the exact same job. And this time, I go in there and I know better. I do everything right. Well, as we're serving chow, back then they had metal trays. They didn't have the plastic trays. A fight breaks out in the chow hall that I'm in. Well, I turn and look, and everybody's on the ground, including the officers, and all the inmates are on the ground. I'm the only one standing up. I don't know any better. And some of the inmates are yelling at me, you know, they'd call you fish. Fish, get on the ground, get on the ground. And I'm like, what? I didn't understand. What do you mean, get on the ground? And it's going by so fast, yet it's so slow in your head that you're trying to figure out what to do. And right then, a big metal tray goes whizzing by my head and hits the wall behind me. If that would have hit me, that would have hurt. So, of course, I got on the ground. And then it was within seconds, the gunman starts firing the Mini 14. And it's so loud in there when those guns go off, and all the bullets are ricocheting off the wall. They went to a glacier round eventually that would hit something and explode, but they didn't have those back then. It would ricochet.
So these are rubber bullets?
No, they're real bullets.
Real bullets?
Yeah, they're real bullets.
So who were they trying to hit?
He fired some warning shots first before he started shooting the inmates.
Oh.
They would usually do that. They didn't have to, but a lot of times they would.
Okay, and you actually wanted to quit initially.
I wanted to quit that same week. Back up for a second. I was what they call a part-time employee, a PI, part-time intermittent for my first week. Mm-hmm. And it was common back then. You would start off that way, and usually the second or third week they'd pull you up full-time. So you'd get different jobs the first couple weeks working. So that same week, they had given me a job in Industries, the mattress factory. And you go back there, and it's a huge factory that makes mattresses, a mattress factory, right? And 2 officers with, 500-600 inmates, just a ton of them. And it's time for them to get off work and leave and go lock up for count before dinner. So the buzzer goes off, and back then, this is 86, we didn't have electrical alarms, that you could hit. Now they carry an alarm, you can hit it and the buzzers go off. They didn't have those. All you had was a whistle. That was it. That was your alarm.
Whistle. Okay.
A whistle. And so you would actually check your whistle to make sure it works before you go to work. And so the officer tells me, hey, go up there on the deck up there and tell all them inmates to lock up. It's time to go. I said, okay. So I go up there, and it's dark up there, and it goes forever. And way in the back, there's 3 inmates sitting there, and they're just sitting down. And they got these tumblers, and they're drinking their coffee or whatever they have in there. And I tell everybody, hey, it's time to go. We got to go lock up. And everybody's like, okay. And most of them got up and went. And everybody knows you're new. Everybody knew I was new. Well, I turn around, I'm walking, I go back to the stairs, and those 3 inmates are still just sitting back there. They just totally ignored me. Now, in my mind, I'm thinking of in the academy, they tell you, don't let the inmates punk you. Don't let them challenge you. You know, you got to stand up to them, and once you do, they'll leave you alone. So I go back over there, and I said, hey, guys, did you hear me? It's time to go. And they said, yeah, we heard you. I said, okay. So I walk off again, walk all the way back to the stairs, and they're still sitting back there. So I go back over there. I yelled, hey, boy, let's go. Let's go. Come on, boy, we got to go. And the one tall, skinny guy stands up and has this look on his face, and he walks by me, walks real close to me, and just stares at me. And then the other inmate stands up, and he walks by me, just shaking his head. Well, then this great big giant, I don't know if you remember who, I always refer to him as Michael Clark Duncan, I think his name was, the actor, great big, played in the Green Mile with the
Green
big
Mile, yeah.
shoulders and traps, and just gigantic. And not only gigantic, but he's tall. He stands up and he walks in, he's just staring at me. He walks right up to me and he doesn't touch me, but he points. He goes, you're lucky you're new. I'm like, what? What do you mean? He goes, you're lucky you're new. I'm like, I'm sorry, why? What'd I do? He said, you don't call black people boys. And you're lucky you're new. You do that again, then you won't leave up here. No problem. And I did know better, but I wasn't thinking, I just was talking. I wasn't thinking, oh, I'm going to call a black guy a boy. I'm just talking, let's go. And I was going to quit after that. Because they could kill me up there. Nobody would know the difference until I didn't show up back down the stairs. And so I was going to quit. I went on my weekend. I thought, man, I'll just go paint cars or something. I was into cars and motorcycles. And I went back to work the next week. And I remember working the upper yard, and some whistles went off and the gunshots went off. And back then in '86, the women could still wear skirts. They had correctional officer skirts, which was a wool skirt. And they also didn't have 3 at 50 back then. So you had some people in their 60s working. You know, they just haven't retired yet. And when those whistles and gunshots went off, the flood of the officers went running over there. And 2 of them were women in those skirts, older women, running towards it. And it clicked in my mind. I'm like, wait a minute. If they can do this, I can do this. I just got to stick it out and get used to it. And now, mind you, too, a couple people that I've came there with have already quit. They've already came and quit and left. And so I stuck it out, and I'm glad I did.
Well, while you were over there, Stanley Tookie Williams
Yes.
was an inmate. Now, Tookie was the founder of the Crips, and he was in there on 4 counts of first-degree murder with special circumstances and 2 counts of robbery. So in 1979, allegedly, Tookie and his accomplices robbed a 7-Eleven store. He took the clerk back, a 24-year-old Albert Owens, to a back room, made him kneel, and shot him twice in the back with a shotgun. There was also the murders of the Yang family. They say that in 1979, that Tookie broke into a motel in L.A. and murdered 3 members of an immigrant family from Taiwan who owned the motel. A 67-year-old, a 63-year-old, and a 43-year-old daughter. What was your relationship with Tookie?
Tookie Williams, he was originally, when I first started in the adjustment center, I eventually got a job in the adjustment center, which was a housing unit that held all the problem inmates in the other ADSEG units. So most of San Quentin at the time, they were administrative segregation units or SHU units. They never came out of their cells unless they were handcuffed. They got escorted to showers and stuff, including death row.
Right.
If they assaulted staff or had problems with other inmates on their yard, they would get in trouble and they'd be sent to the adjustment center. In the adjustment center, you kind of got handpicked to work. I ran across a lieutenant at the gym who liked me and asked if I wanted a job in there. Of course I did. That's the you're really somebody if you work the adjustment center. At least that's what I thought. So I'm working the adjustment center, and I had heard that Tookie Williams assaulted an officer at death row.
What was the situation about?
They got in some kind of argument where, and this is coming from Tookie, who told me, the officer was pushing him around and wanted him to wear one set of handcuffs. Tookie Williams was gigantic, probably one of the biggest guys I've seen. Not super tall, but just huge. And so you'd always double handcuff him. You'd put 2 sets of handcuffs on him. You'd hook the handcuffs together because his arms wouldn't reach all the way
that's
behind
what you mean.
him.
So you could extend the length of the handcuffs.
Right, so to extend it. Well, the officer's telling him, no, you're going to listen to me. I don't listen to inmates. And Tookie's trying to explain to him, hey, you need to put 2 handcuffs on me. And I don't know if he was going to yard or going to the shower or what. I don't remember that part. But Tookie said the officer kept telling him, no, you listen to me. I'm the officer. And it was a newer officer. And Tookie says, okay, I'm fine. In his mind, he's just going to go wherever he's going to go. It's one incident, no big deal, and go on about his day. So he gets his hands back there. They handcuff him. He backs out of the cell, and now the officer starts pushing him and talking crap to him, talking shit to him. And Tookie just had enough. And so he snapped the handcuffs and
broke the handcuffs.
He broke the handcuffs,
Okay.
turned and looked at the officer and said, what do you want to do? I'm sorry, he was going to yard because it was in an area where the gunman couldn't see him. And he said, you know what, Monahan, that officer, when he works overtime in this unit, he won't even talk to me. He won't even say nothing to me. And so that happened. They brought him to the adjustment center, and he was on our first floor in the adjustment center for the remainder of the time I worked there.
Okay, well, another inmate that was there during your time was Taquan Cox, a.k.a. Lil Fee, who was also affiliated with the Crips. So he was actually there for mass murder. He was sentenced to death in 1984 for the murders of various family members of NFL player Kermit Alexander. So basically what happened was him and another suspect burst into this person's home. They opened fire, killing 4 people in the process. And this was the house of Ebra Alexander, who's the mother. As it so happens, they were actually at the wrong house.
Right.
It was 2 doors down.
Yep.
So he gets put in death row along with Tookie Williams. And according to reports, I guess Tookie told him to stab another inmate because Tookie thought that was an informant. And when he refused, Cox actually stabbed Tookie.
Yes.
What was this story about?
Just what you had said. That was the rumors. Most of that stuff I had never read, but all the officers would talk about it, and that was the rumors, was that Tookie wanted him to stab somebody else, and he didn't want to, and they got in a big beef over it. And when Taquan Cox had the chance, he stabbed Tookie. And then and Taquan Cox then came to the adjustment center after that, before Tookie ever got there. And it was ordered from Tookie that whoever can kill Taquan Cox, that he wanted that done.
How bad was the stabbing on Tookie?
This guy was so big, it probably didn't do much. Yeah, I never saw it. I didn't see the medical exam or nothing like that. And then Taquan Cox had to go to the yard all by himself from that point on.
Well, if they're both on death row, what are they doing on the yard?
They have closed-in yards about the size of this room.
Okay, it's a bunch of death row people?
Yeah, and they get segregated by gang affiliation or by race.
Okay, does that still happen to this day?
I've heard it's changed and that they let everybody kind of mingle with everybody now, except for those units, and they'll put them in, they call them cages. It's not a big yard anymore. It's like a
right,
cage.
and they just put them outside in a cage,
Correct.
basically. So you can be outside, but you can't actually touch anybody.
Right.
Okay, because it would seem a little crazy to put a whole bunch of death row inmates in a room together and hope for the best.
Right, right. Now they would segregate them, that one gang goes to one yard, another gang goes to another yard, so they all would get along for the most part. At least that was the idea of it.
Okay, so now Lil Fee, Taekwon Cox, is now back on a yard with a target on his head.
Correct.
And what happens?
We basically, the correctional officers or the guards, whatever you want to call them, had to protect him.
Really?
Yeah.
But he's doing life in prison. I mean, he actually has the death penalty, but he's doing life.
Right. And so he was in the adjustment center, and he could go to medical visits, and he'd go to the yard by himself. They called it a walk-alone yard. And so he would go out there for a few hours.
Oh, by himself, meaning there's no one else around.
No one else around.
Oh, so he can't be around anyone else for the rest of his life, basically?
Correct.
Wow.
Correct. And back then, the adjustment center had three yards, and he would be in one yard by himself on the opposite day that the Crips would be out there.
Okay. Now, Tookie always maintained his innocence so that he didn't kill anybody. And during the course of being locked up, he started writing books. And because of these books and a bunch of anti-gang work that he did, he got nominated 5 times for the Nobel Peace Prize and nominated 1 time for the Nobel Prize in Literature.
Right.
Which is crazy. Have you heard of anyone else getting nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize in prison?
No, I actually haven't, no.
5 times he was nominated.
Right.
Were you there during these nominations?
No, I had left by then. I left there in 92.
Okay, so that happened afterwards.
Yeah.
Okay, so he was executed after you left.
Yes.
I had heard that they broke like multiple needles trying to get the needle in his arm.
Oh, I'd believe it.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's true or not, but I believe it.
Okay, and a lot of people spoke out because what they're basically arguing for is, well, is this person rehabilitated?
Right.
Yes, he did this, horrible set of acts, but he's nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize, which is one of the highest, which is probably the biggest peace prize you could get in the world of all time.
Right.
Do you feel that they should have stayed his execution?
No, I think he should have still been executed for what he did. That's just my personal belief. He was he was very respectful. He never gave us a hard time. As long as you didn't disrespect him, he was fine. He knew he was in there for a long time, and he just wanted to do his time. I don't think writing a book is going to take away what he had done or what he did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Charles Manson was there while you were there.
Yes.
Now, Charles Manson, who was considered a cult leader, he led the Manson family cult during the 60s and 70s. And the cult members committed at least 9 murders, including the murder of Sharon Tate, the actress. So even though Manson never directly ordered the murders, they're saying his overall ideology led to it. And he got life in prison.
Correct.
He didn't get the death penalty, did he?
No, I think he originally got the death penalty, and then they took the death penalty away for a while and converted everybody to life.
Okay, and Manson was quite the figure. I mean, he had the swastika on his forehead, and he would act crazy in interviews and so forth. What was he like in real life?
He was a character. He would definitely put on a show in front of the media, but he was still a character of his own. He would talk, I call it hippie slang or hippie language. So you dig and man a lot. He called me Irish. My nickname was Irish. The first day I ran into him, I was running showers, and I take him out of the cell, and he's in handcuffs, and I'm with another officer. And he turns and he looks at me, jumps at me. He goes, boo, 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 boo. I'm like, what? And then he looks at my name tag. He goes, Monahan. I go, yeah. He goes, Irish. You're Irish from now on. I'm like, okay. All right, Charlie, that's fine. And so we got along good with Charlie. He definitely a character. You'd take him to visits or with the news media and stuff, and he would act up, and we knew that. So when he started jumping around and doing his karate and all that stuff, we'd just sit and watch him, and then handcuff him back up and bring him back to the thing. We're coming back one time, and he says, "How do you think I did, Irish?" I'm like, "What do you mean?" He goes, "Did I give them what they wanted?" I said, "Yeah." I said, "I don't know how you do that. I'd be worried about doing all that stuff." And he goes, "Nah, you can't worry, Irish. You're here one time, man. Live your life. That's all you can do."
Yeah, while he's in prison.
Got life,
Saying that.
life advice from Charles Manson.
Well, like, Charles Manson's not a big guy.
No.
And he was also getting older and so forth.
Right.
Was he protected by, like, the white gangs, or did people mess with him, or?
No one really messed with him. I think throughout his if you want to call it a career through prison, there were times where they messed with him.
Yeah, like, in what way?
Pick on him or stab. I think someone tried to stab him once. Somebody tried to burn him. I can't remember the whole story with that. I think someone tried to throw gas and catch him on fire.
Damn.
I can't remember where that was. It wasn't at San Quentin. It was somewhere else. And then he had came into the adjustment center basically for protective custody, and we would let him out and play his guitar on the weekends. We'd pull him out and he'd play his guitar in a holding cage. And this is how he thinks, or he's always paying attention, right? And so we let him play one day, and he could sing and play guitar pretty good. And he always said he wrote songs for the Beach Boys and stuff, which I think at one point he did. Put him back in his cell, and I'm leaving. It's about 1:30. We get off at 2 o'clock, and his cell's all the way at the end, near the end of the unit, because birds and ants and stuff can come in his cell, and he would call those his pets. And so he's yelling at me one time, "Irish, come down here before you go home. Irish, come down here." I'm working with this guy, Mario Gates, and I'm like, I'm yelling, "Charlie, I'm going home." He goes, I know, come down here first. So I think it was Mario. I said, "Come down here with me." So you had to have 2 officers when we went down the tier, and then the 3rd officer worked the gates. So I go down there, I'm like, "Charlie, what's up?" He goes, Here, I made a birthday card for your wife. Tell her happy birthday." And I'm like, "How do you know it's her birthday?" He goes, "Oh, I know things, man. Come on, you dig, man?" And he starts laughing. He's got that grin on his face. I go, "Charlie, how do you know it's my wife's birthday?" And he goes, "Well, when I'm down there playing the guitar and singing, you walked right in there in the office and picked up the telephone and called her and told her happy birthday." I'm like, "Oh, okay, I get it now." So he was listening the whole time, and I brought the birthday card, but he was an artist in his own way, and he would make things. He made me a scorpion.
A scorpion?
Yeah, a scorpion out of socks.
You actually have it with you?
Yeah.
Okay, let's check out the Charles Manson sock scorpion.
Charles Manson sock scorpion. It's pretty cool, actually.
Okay.
To think of how they would make it.
Oh.
So.
Okay.
So that's the scorpion that he would unravel socks and make them. And he'd always put some kind of swastika or something in it, whatever he made. And then
well, was he?
That was the birthday card.
Okay, that's a fairly scary birthday card.
Yeah, my wife at the time didn't want it in the house.
Yeah. Then you had Richard Ramirez, a.k.a. the Night Stalker. And between 1984 and 85, Ramirez murdered at least 15 people. He would actually break into their homes and kill them. And it was usually done in the dark. So people started calling him the Night Stalker, the Walking Killer, the Valley Intruder. And he was convicted and sentenced to death in 1989.
Correct.
And this guy, I mean, Manson looks just sort of crazy. Richard Ramirez, to me, is scary.
Richard Ramirez is real scary.
Yeah.
When you talk to Richard, looking in his eyes, it's hard to explain, but there was nothing there.
Huh.
And sometimes you would repeat yourself because you're not sure if he understood you, and he did. He would just pause before he answered you or whatever, and he was the one that was kind of nuts. He would get mail from women, and women would send pictures of themselves, and he would carve out all the eyes in the pictures. And we never figured out what that was. And he would talk about the crimes in a third party, like his friend did it, not him. You know, and he could do no wrong. Their religion, you can kill, you can do whatever you want, whatever his religion was, Satanism or whatever. And he would tell stories if you got him going. And he told a story one time that where his friend did it, not him, was in San Francisco, and gets into a house to kill or rob or whatever he's going to do, and realizes there's a large party going on. So he had to hide in a closet. And he had to hide there for about 2 hours before he could get back out because the people keep walking down the hallway. Well, finally, when he got a chance, he got back out and left. Well, the reason I tell that story is, to me, it's weird that to this day, there's a family that had lived in San Francisco that had Richard Ramirez, the Night Stalker, hiding in their closet for 2 hours, and they'll never know. They have no idea who it was. And he was a character. He was different.
Well, with people like Richard Ramirez, they get put in protective custody. But at one point, he got paperwork that allowed him to go to the yard.
Yes.
General population.
Yes.
What happens next?
Well, he got paperwork to go to the yard in the adjustment center, which was going to be another, basically a yard for protective custody inmates, but they were still dangerous inmates. And me and Officer Rodriguez, we ran the first floor in the adjustment center at this time, and we controlled who gets to go where and how and when. And so the first day or two, we didn't let Richard Ramirez go to the yard because we knew something was going to happen to him. And we were just trying to avoid it, trying to get the counselors to change their mind. And Richard was adamant that he wanted to go to the yard. I want to go to the yard.
Why was he allowed to go? What was the difference?
I'm not sure what the difference was. All I know is the counselor that he was assigned to said he was now fit to go to the yard.
Okay.
Why and how or what changed, I have no idea.
Got it. Okay,
so
so eventually you let him go to the yard.
Correct.
What happens next?
He's not on the yard maybe 3 minutes, and he gets stabbed. Not bad. It kind of just scraped him, but it was with a shank, and the gunman fires rounds, and we go out and get him off the yard, take him, get medically cleared, and then put him back in his cell, and he never went to the yard again.
That was it, huh?
Yeah, that was
grand opening, grand closing.
That was it.
Who stabbed him?
I don't remember who it was. It was somebody on that yard, in the PC yard, and you'd have mixed races on the PC yard.
Well, but I mean, his murders weren't really fueled off race, were they?
No, I don't believe so. No.
Okay, so why would they stab the Night Stalker? Just to do it, so they could say they stabbed the Night Stalker?
That's the only thing we could think of. Yeah.
Okay, so that's the thing. Like a high-profile inmate, if you could stab him, you're considered.
Oh yeah, we get well known.
Okay, but people left Charles Manson alone.
Yeah, for the most part. Like I said, during his time, I had heard in the history that Charles Manson would get bothered by people. So, but they both were. I mean, you could talk to them, and they would talk to you. Charles Manson, you could joke around with more. Richard would just look at you. You know, I'd tell Charles Manson to play Helter Skelter when has his guitar and stuff. But Richard was the weird one.
Well, you were also overlooking David Esco Welch, who committed a home invasion massacre in Oakland in 1986, where he killed 6 people.
Correct.
What was that situation about?
I don't know why he killed them or what he just straight up murdered all of them.
Yeah.
And he had came into the adjustment center for some reason and was housed on our famed row, which was the first floor.
Okay, so David Welch was dating a girl. The relationship broke apart, and 2 of his pit bulls were hit by a car while in the care of this girl's brothers. Okay, so being upset over the situation, he actually broke into the family house. Once he entered the home, he demanded that his dogs be returned. He started ransacking the house and started shooting his gun at people that were sleeping there at the time, killing all those people, essentially. It was all over a dog and a breakup over a girl.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I know he had killed a bunch of people. I wasn't sure what it was over. And Welch wasn't the best inmate, but he did his time, and he was I don't even know why I would think this or how, but he was more of a punk inmate. They just didn't mean nothing to nobody, and One time he's in his cell, and we bring a new inmate in. And this new inmate comes in for some kind of computer thing. He was a safekeeper for the federal government that we were holding for a minute. Mm-hmm. And we walk him down the tier, and Welch just erupts in anger and screaming and yelling, and just, we can't figure out why. Well, this inmate we had brought in was a former Oakland, I think it was Oakland police officer that was on that case that arrested Welch. And so we had to separate him and put him on different tiers.
So the cop that arrested him ended up being locked up with him.
Right. He was part of the arrest team that had arrested him, yes.
Okay. Were there a lot of cops locked up in San Quentin?
There was a couple, not a lot. We would usually have them in the adjustment center for protective custody.
Okay. You can't put them in general population.
No. Some will choose to go there and be fine, but a lot of them just go to the protective custody units.
Well, did a lot of rapes occur in San Quentin while you were there?
Not that I'm aware of. I do know of one when I worked H unit, where I was working H unit, working graveyard on overtime. H unit is a dorm setting outside the walls of San Quentin. And again, I was on overtime, and this Officer Lopez calls me on the radio. So I go to her and talk to her, and she says, "Hey, these inmates are in the shower with this little inmate, and they're having sex." I'm like, "Well, how do you know they're having sex?" It's 2 a.m. Let me talk about that. It's 2 a.m, graveyards. And she goes, "Well, because their dick was hard. I mean, and this guy's, I saw it." I go, "Well, what'd you do?" She goes, "Well, I sat and watched for a minute, and then I came to get you. I wasn't sure what to do, right?" So she came to get me. Yeah, so it was her exact words. I sat and watched for a minute, so she came and got me. I said, "Well, let's go back in there. They can't, I personally didn't want to have to roll up everybody and lock everybody up and send them upstairs to the main yards." So I go in there, and sure enough, there's one little, I can't remember what we used to call them. The inmate that was a girl,
Trans.
Like a trans, like their girl, like everyone's girlfriend.
Well, okay, hold on. Were trans inmates allowed in the prison?
Yeah.
So even with the whole girl setup and everything else like that,
they would look like girls.
I'd heard that if you do that, you're gonna cause all types of problems because you got all these men who are seeing sort of a woman for the first time, locked up with them as an inmate. And,
they would have relationship problems just like out on the street.
Right.
And they had boobs. I mean,
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And you could just put them in general population?
Yeah.
Were there a lot of problems?
They would cause their own problems, yes. Yes. But when we went into the shower,
they would cause their own problems.
We go into that shower, and there's 3 dudes having their way with this person.
Okay.
And so I'm like, "Hey, man, you guys need to go to bed." When we walked in, they froze. They stopped.
Okay, but was it a rape or was it consensual?
I think it was consensual because I asked that guy. I said, "Are you okay?" He said, "Yeah, I'm fine." I said, "Well, you can't be doing that. You can get rolled up for that." They're like, "Yeah, we know. We're going to bed." And that was during the first part of my career. I think back in the late '80s.
Did you question your job at this point? Like, this is what you do for a living?
I questioned my job a lot throughout that time. But yeah, it was when they were in Ad Sagan, you would strip search them. There's guys with boobs, and you're going, "What? This is weird," But you got used to it and just treated them like everybody else.
Okay. Now, the yard is segregated.
Right.
You got the Sureños, the Norteños,
correct,
the blacks, the whites, Latinos. Well, the Latinos are the Sureños. I mean,
right.
And Norteños. I guess the Puerto Ricans and Dominicans probably mix in with them somehow, right?
Right.
And all the riots are based on race, essentially.
Correct.
How many race riots were you actually involved in?
Working the adjustment center, we were kind of segregated ourselves, so we didn't have to work the main yard where a lot of the riots would occur. There was some riots in West Block that had occurred based off of race, and it was usually, a lot of times it was the Southern and Northern Mexicans against each other. And so you would see that happen. It didn't happen a lot. I wasn't personally involved in a lot of the riots, but that one in West Block I was, where we got held and had to work a bunch of overtimes, because West Block was what they called a mainline unit, and they could come and go out of their cells. It was one of the units that wasn't an ad seg. And when they lock them up, you have to treat it like an ad seg unit, which is going to require 3 times the officers. So they would hold you. But in the adjustment center, we would segregate them by northern Mexicans, southern Mexicans. White inmates went with the southern Mexicans. I think it was the BGF or the Crips, I can't remember which, went with the northern Mexicans. Because you couldn't put BGF and Crips together either.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they had to be segregated too. They had to be separate.
Right. Now, there was a situation where they accidentally put a northern Mexican in a yard with Sureños.
Yes, on the southern yard. We had me and Rodriguez ran the first floor, so we would control all the inmates going to the yard or going to a doctor's visit or going to the visiting room, whatever the case may be, and we're running yard. So in the adjustment center, every morning you would start off and you would do bar checks. You actually took a putty knife and checked all the bars, and you'd pick one tier, one floor, one side. When you're done with that, you'd start running yard. Well, while we're doing that, me and Rodriguez noticed there's a new officer in there that is working the second floor. And a lot of times you didn't want new officers in there. You didn't want them working. They didn't know what was going on. They're the ones that are going to, it's going to create work for you that you didn't want. And we start running yard. Well, that new officer grabs a guy, takes him out of his cell, comes to me and Rodriguez, and it's the Southern Mexicans' yard day. And I'm looking at his name, and Rodriguez looks at me and goes, is he on there? I said, I don't know. And Rodriguez looks at him, and says, you going to yard? He goes, yeah, I'm going to yard. And so the officer takes him out there. Well, as I'm looking on the list, I don't see him. So I flip it over to the Northern Mexican list, and I see his name. I turned and yelled at Rodriguez. I said, hey, pull him off the yard. Get him off the yard. And right then the gunshot went off. It was already too late. The officer had let him out in the yard. And there was probably about 12 to 15 inmates out there, and they had all jumped on him already. They didn't stab him, but I think if he was out there long enough and they had a chance to stab him, they would have. And so when we pulled him back off the yard, he wasn't hurt, didn't want to go to the hospital. So I personally asked him, dude, why are you going out to the yard when you know better? Because I'm not a punk. Because I'm gonna stand. I'm not a punk. Southern Mexicans are punks. I'm not. I'll fight all of them.
Okay. Well.
And so how do you? I mean, you can, in a weird way, you respect that. Like, okay, stick him back in his cell.
I remember talking to various people about the Whitey Bulger murder, where they accidentally put him in a place with essentially various mafia people who had hits on him.
Right.
And they just killed him so badly they couldn't even figure out who he was for a while.
Right.
Does that type of thing happen? I mean, you're talking about this incident where they put a norteño in a whole yard full of Sureños.
Right.
Do mistakes happen where people get killed and so forth?
Mistakes do happen. It was pretty rare at my time working there. Everything was so controlled at San Quentin at the time. That was one mistake that all of us got in trouble for. That mistake. And the new officer, I got in trouble. Rodriguez got in trouble. And when I say trouble, we got written up that went into our file. A lot of stuff would happen in the main line, because there's more blind spots and stuff in the main line that's not seen by the gunman. San Quentin was a pretty violent prison back then, back in the late 80s and early 90s. It started to calm down a little bit in the 90s when they started transferring everybody out to Corcoran and Pelican Bay, and now it's barely even a prison.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's a reception center, low level prison. It's a level 1 in prison, might be a level 2. I know people that work there, and that's the only reason I even know about it.
Well, you had friends who were prison guards who actually got killed on duty?
No, I got a friend that got stabbed in the neck, but he didn't die.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he had a problem with the inmate, and the inmate had gotten out, and they got in an argument. And the inmate turned and stabbed him in the neck, and he still got a big old scar across his neck.
He survived that, though.
He did survive that.
Wow.
Before that, there was a Sergeant Birchfield. Before I started working, but it was that same year. Sergeant Birchfield had gotten stabbed and killed in that same unit that this officer got stabbed in the neck, and Sergeant Birchfield got stabbed in the heart with a shank. The gunman shot and killed the inmate also, but they both died. And that's what brought in that the officers had to wear like a stab-proof vest after that if you work in an ADSA unit.
Well, you hear about all these death row inmates that end up dying before they're actually executed.
Right.
Like the Night Stalker died of like cancer,
Right,
or something.
right.
And then you see all these other inmates where it's like he was sentenced to death in 1986 and he's
Right.
still alive in
Right.
2025 and they're like 80 something years old. Why does it take so long to actually execute somebody? Because Tookie got executed.
Right.
But like, for example, Lil Fee, who also has the death penalty, is still alive last
Right.
I checked.
Right.
So like, why does that happen?
I believe it's all the court systems and their appeals that they have, and it takes so long, and the courts are so overwhelmed with cases, and when these lawyers bring up appeals, it just buys them time forever.
Well, inmates on death row, do they all want to live and maximize their time, or some of them just like, I'm over it, I'm getting tired of this death penalty hanging over my head, just go ahead and do it?
I've ran into guys that they're just done. They're done with it. They don't want to. They just want to be sentenced to death and go to death and be gone.
Okay, but can they speed that along if they want to?
You'll still have
You still
people
have to
that-
go through the whole, so you can't actually die even if you want
Right.
to.
You'll have people that fight for you still.
Huh.
Thank
Even
you.
if you don't want to fight.
Right.
Wow, that's kind of interesting.
Yeah, it's very
in a way.
interesting.
How many people have been executed while you were at San Quentin?
There was 2, and then Tookie, but Tookie was executed after I left.
So 2 people got executed while you were there. Was it a big deal or was it just a regular day?
The whole thing, it would start about a week ahead of time, and you would basically shut down the prison, get enough staff to feed all the inmates while they're in their holding cages. When they're in their cells.
Why is it shut down?
Just for safety reasons. They don't want the inmates causing any problems or starting a riot or anything that's gonna take away from the execution. And then it's a big ordeal. You would have staging locations for officers. You'd have staging locations for the media, and everybody would get escorted in. And even then, at that time, you would do that and set it up. And a couple times, just before the execution, they would get a stay. And
Oh,
so
really?
they would get taken back to their cell and continue to live. And the whole setup was dismantled.
But they weren't actually pardoned by the governor. It was what? Like someone filed some sort of document at last minute and the judge signed off on it.
Correct.
Okay. Got it.
Correct.
Okay, so in 1992, you're around 27 years old. You left San Quentin
I left San Quentin.
and
Yes.
you joined Solano State Prison,
Correct.
but you didn't like it.
I hated Solano State Prison. It's hard to explain in a way, but San Quentin was a prison, and I'm careful because I don't want to disrespect my friends and stuff that worked at Solano, but Solano was a prison too, but it was just ran different. At San Quentin, the officers were right, the inmates were wrong. At Solano, all the inmates were right, and the officers were wrong.
Really?
If something was said or done by an inmate, our lieutenants at San Quentin would listen to them, but 99% of the time it was just bullshit. At Solano, you would get in trouble for the craziest, stupidest things, and the inmates were allowed more freedom at Solano. It was also a different level prison too, and at the time I'm what am I, 27 or something? I'm still a kid, so at San Quentin, nobody would tell on each other. The officers wouldn't tell on each other. The inmates wouldn't tell on each other. The officers, it happened to me twice. You would see officers fist fighting in the parking lot, settling their beef in the parking lot.
With each other?
With each other.
Okay.
There was a fist fight in the upper yard at San Quentin where the inmates were around the officers rooting them on
Really?
while they're fist fighting.
Wow. Okay.
At Solano, the officers wouldn't come to you if they had a problem. They'd go to their sergeant or their lieutenant and tell on you. And it was that way with the inmates too. The inmates would tell. I've never had an inmate tell on another inmate till I started working at Solano State Prison. And I worked there in the kitchen, and the inmate had came to me and said, "Hey, I can't remember the guy's name, but so-and-so's not mopping the floor." Well, I was kind of shocked by that. I'm like, well, why are you telling me? Because at San Quentin, if you told on another inmate, they're going to stab you or they're going to hurt you. And he goes, well, because the floor needs mopped. I said, okay, well, you're the lead inmate. So if he's not mopping the floor, that means you got to mop the floor. You got to do something. But he needs to mop the floor. Well, what if nobody mops the floor? Then we all sit in the chow hall until somebody decides to mop the floor. A couple of days go by, and that inmate that wouldn't mop the floor shows up to work one day, and he's got a black eye on his little black eye, and starts mopping the floor. Not that that's right, and that's not what I was getting at with that inmate, but that's how it was at San Quentin. You did your job. You didn't tell on each other, and they were I would call them convicts. They were stand-up men that committed crimes that were going to serve their time and leave and go home. And didn't make excuses, didn't sue everybody for, saying it was everybody else's fault. They would do what they need to do. And Solano was just different times, changing. And I didn't like Solano.
Okay, so 2 years later, you actually left.
Yes.
Really being a prison guard altogether.
Yes.
And you want to become a cop.
Yes.
Now, you applied to CHP,
Yes.
California Highway Patrol, but you failed the background test.
Correct.
What was wrong with the background test?
I failed the background test because of my, I was in the hospital at one point, just before, while I'm going through the backgrounds, and they had done a bunch of blood tests on me. While in the hospital, I had admitted to steroids that I had taken. Mm-hmm. So they're on my record. They weren't illegal back then, but they were frowned upon. Some of them were illegal, some weren't. And so I didn't want to tell CHP about it because I didn't want them to look at that. And I had stopped taking them by now because it just wasn't right. And they had taken my blood test and saw that my blood tests were out of whack. So they wanted an explanation for my blood tests. So I went to my private doctor, showed him, and he said, well, you either got tuberculosis or you're on steroids. Because doesn't look like to me that you have tuberculosis. So he wrote an explanation. I gave it to the background investigator and let him know that I was in the hospital. So he pulled my records. The reason I failed the background is for not telling them that I was in the hospital. I withheld information. And so I had to wait a year to reapply, which I did. I reapplied a year later. But when I reapplied, it knocked so many points off that I passed everything, and I was in the queue waiting to get hired, but there were so many people above me to get hired.
Okay, so instead, you end up joining Richmond Police Department.
Correct.
In Richmond, California, the Bay.
Correct.
Once again. Now, at the time, Richmond was the #1 most dangerous city in America.
Correct.
With 64 murders in 1 year in a population of only 100,000.
Yeah, correct.
So it was a mess.
Right.
And okay, so now you're a cop, you're not a correctional officer anymore.
Correct.
And you're in the city where the crime rate is bananas.
Right.
So originally you're a street cop.
Correct.
But you
For
eventually
about a
join undercover narcotics.
Correct.
So what was that process like? Because this whole time you're the cop, right? You're the cop in the prison, you're
Right.
a cop on the street, but now you're undercover.
Correct.
And you're buying drugs from people.
Correct.
And you become friends with these people only to bust them later on.
Correct.
How does that feel?
Terrible.
Okay.
Sometimes I have a harder time with it than others. I didn't have to do it a lot because a lot of times we used informants. and informants would do things. And it wasn't something I had set out to do. I was a patrol officer for about a year, and then got assigned to ride, and we rode dirt bikes, and they called us the Biker Boys. There was 8 of us and a sergeant. And I say dirt bikes, they were enduros. They were street legal, but they were dirt bikes. And that was our job was to go after the street level dealers on the corners and catch them selling dope on the corners. And I did that for about 5 or 6 years, and then that led to me going to narcotics, undercover narcotics. And I had done that. I did that for about 6 years. And that's kind of what it entails. You would hear about somebody that's supposed to be a drug dealer. And if you couldn't get an informant, you'd try and get an informant into them so you could do a search warrant on their house and recover their drugs and money and arrest them that way. Sometimes the informants or somebody would introduce you as a cop. They wouldn't tell them, obviously wouldn't say that you're a cop, but you're undercover, had long hair and a beard, and I either rode a Harley or a pickup truck with a wheelbarrow in the back. And we would do just little buys here and there from different people and arrest them later.
Well, you had one situation where you bought 5 pounds of meth.
Correct.
From a guy named Ben?
Yes.
Okay. And what happens next?
So this case agent, a detective that I worked with, asked if I would be the undercover. I said yes. The first time I had bought from Ben and his brother was just an ounce. And so I don't remember who introduced me to him, but back then I would ride just a street Harley Davidson. It wasn't marked or nothing. You couldn't tell it was a police bike or nothing. We actually had rented it. So I'd ride up on my Harley and meet him in the van, buy an ounce. Well, then that worked up to a pound. So I went and bought a pound and left. And a lot of times they would start feeling more comfortable if they would sell a pound and not get arrested. I know it sounds goofy, but in their mind, okay, this is for real. This can be a good thing. And the next thing was going to be 5 pounds. And back then we didn't have cell phones. You had pagers and pay phones and stuff. I think we had radios. I don't think we had Nextels yet. They hadn't came out yet. And so we set up this 5 pound deal. My story was I'm buying it for somebody else that lives in Marin. It's his money. And we're going to start doing business. And we wanted to start off with 5 pounds. And if we can do more, we'll do more. We're working with a task force with FBI and DEA at the time also. And we set it up. I go to meet him at his apartment. Now, at this time, we have SWAT officers surrounded the area, a lot of surveillance officers down the street, binoculars, a whole bit. And I go to meet Ben and his brother inside his apartment, which is upstairs in one of the biggest ghettos in the city of Richmond. And mainly, blacks or Hispanics lived in this area, so I stuck out like a sore thumb. I had a car at that time with a partner who was also an undercover officer, but his job was just to stay in the car, the driver, who also looked, you could tell he was a cop either. And so I remember walking up the stairs and going inside this apartment. And I actually felt pretty comfortable. I have a bunch of money. I don't remember how much it was, $43,000, $48,000. I can't remember how much it was back then, but it was a lot of money. You get old, you start forgetting some of the details. But I go inside, and I feel pretty comfortable. His wife's there, his kids are there, and he goes, let's go in the bedroom. I said, okay. So him and his brother go in the bedroom. I go in the bedroom. He asked me, he goes, you got a gun on you? I said, yeah, of course I got a gun on me. He goes, all right, put it on the bed. So I put my gun on the bed. They put their guns on the bed. And his brother pulls out 2 pounds. Says, okay, here's 2 pounds. Pay us for that, and then we'll get the other 3 and call you when we have it. I said, no. He goes, what do you mean, no? I said, no. The deal's for 5 pounds. I have all the money in the car downstairs. If I take 2 pounds back to this guy who's expecting me to bring 5, I look bad. I can't do what I say I'm going to do. I said, so do you have it or not? He goes, no, we have it. I said, okay, well, call me back when you have the 5 pounds. And he goes, okay, we'll do that. So I don't know it at the time, but because I can't hear everything. And I have a wire on me where the officers doing surveillance can hear me. But it was either FBI or DEA. I think it was FBI. Didn't like that. If we could get 2 pounds, they wanted to get 2 pounds. They wanted us to arrest them right then and there. And so they were mad at me for leaving it there and driving away. So as we drive away, I park in a far distance where there's a payphone where I can call him. And he said he would page me when he gets to 5 pounds. Well, surveillance is watching this location. And they're relaying to me that, okay, the wife and kids are leaving. They're dragging some kind of carpet up the stairs into the living room. They're going in and out of the apartment. But him or his brother never left that location. Well, the pager goes off, so I call him on the phone, and he says, okay, we have it, we're ready. I'm like, okay. Now I'm kind of thinking, this is weird. Why is he making everybody leave? And I know that he doesn't have the 5 pounds because surveillance is watching him, but I can't tell him that. So they're asking me, what do you want to do? I said, well, let's go back over there and I'll see what he says. And they said, are you comfortable with that? I said, yeah, let's do it. I'm in this now. So we go back over there, and he comes down the stairs. He says, well, you coming upstairs with the money? I said, no. I said, do you have the 5 pounds or don't you? He goes, well, it's coming. It's coming. Just bring the money upstairs and it'll be here. I said, well, no, let's just hang out. Let's wait. Wait for I'm trying to buy time, trying to figure out, what's going on. I don't tell him that, but in my mind, I know that the 5 pounds is not up there. We're waiting maybe 5-10 minutes. These other two, we call them mopes, but they just basically low-level drug dealers that would transport the drugs. And they show up. They don't say nothing, and they just go upstairs into his apartment. And he looks at me and goes, okay, it's here now. Let's go up there. I said, okay. And he goes, what about the money? And I said, let's look at the drugs. Let's see what you got. He goes, okay. So we go up there. Now I see the carpet. Now there's an AK-47 laying across the kitchen cabinet or the countertop. I walk in the bedroom. He tries to get me to go in the bedroom first, and I won't go. He knows that I'm kind of spooked. And he says, come on, man, this is a family deal. We're gonna do some good business. Relax a little bit. I said, okay. So he goes in there. Now his brother's there, he's there, the other 2 guys are there. And now there's a shotgun laying on the bed, another handgun laying on the bed. And he asked me to put my handgun on the bed too. So I do. And then they both have handguns and they put them on the bed. I'm a little nervous at this point, and I don't see the other 3 pounds yet. Well, them other 2 guys had it strapped to their waistband, and they pull it out and throw it out there. They said, see, here's all 5. So are we good now? I said, yeah, we're good. So let me go downstairs and I'll get the money and I'll bring it up here, and then I'll take that. Well, when I leave the apartment, I don't realize that Ben is right behind me. And the guy in the car, I had said his name was Mark. But I said, Alec is going to like this. And Ben goes, what'd you say? And that was our bus word, our bus signal. Alec's going to like this. Now, when you call the bus signal, you can usually hear cars and stuff in the area starting up, because they're coming to swoop in and arrest everybody. I don't hear nothing. So I say it real loud. Hey, Alec's going to like this. And Ben's right on my back, just right on me. And he's like, what are you saying? What are you saying? You said it was somebody else. I said, no. I said, Alec, the guy in Marin, he's going to like this. No, you said his name was something else. And I did, but I don't remember what I said. I said, Mark's in the car. So now he's spooked, and his brother's up the stairs, and he's kind of scared. And then nobody's coming. So I'm getting to the car to where I have to open the trunk and show him the money. We had the money in there to show him. So I open the trunk, I unzip the duffel bag. As I'm unzipping the duffel bag, that's when the SWAT team and everybody moves in. They throw me on the ground. They throw the other two guys on the ground. They're handcuffing us all, and it's kind of chaotic for a minute. And they go up and clear the apartment. Well, Ben and his brother got away. They had jumped the fence and went over a couple streets, and they broke our perimeter where we had the officers. We didn't have it set up right. At least I don't believe we did, or we would have caught them. They got away. So we finished processing that, continue on with daily business. And that first year, it was about a year had expired, we had heard that Ben's brother had went back to Mexico and had gotten executed or killed. Rumor was it because whoever hooked me up with Ben's brother first, and then Ben's brother hooked me up with Ben. And the rumor was that he got killed for introducing the cops into this whole drug, whether it was cartel or not. Everybody says, oh, it was a cartel. I mean, I don't know if that's true. And then Ben disappeared, and we had heard that Ben was in Mexico. So about a year goes by, and I believe we had Nextels now, but I get a call from the case agent, and he says, hey, what are you doing right now? This is about a year later. I'm sitting at my desk at the police department. And he goes, what are you doing right now? I said, I'm just typing up this last search warrant, we're going to do this weekend. He says, well, I think Ben's over here at the gas station. Can you come over here and see? I said, yeah. So I'll be right there. And it's not that far from the police department. So I jump in my car, I go flying over there. I pull up like I'm getting gas. And sure enough, I see Ben walking out of the store, walking back to his car. And I had dealt with Ben for a while. And so he stops and he looks at me, he goes, hey, Dave, how you doing? And I went by Dave. They go, hey, Ben. I said, good. I said, how you been? He goes, oh, I'm trying to survive. I said, oh, cool. I said, well, good. And he goes, hey, Dave. I go, yeah. He goes, I'm going to jail, aren't I? I said, yep. And so I don't know why I get like this, because he was a crook. But anyways, he goes, this is what I'm going to do. He goes, I'm going to get in my car, I'm going to go back home, and I'm going to say goodbye to my wife and kids. I said, no, man, you can't do that. You can't leave. He goes, no. He goes, I'm going to go do that. And so he jumps in his car and he takes off. And so I next tell the officer, tell him. He calls for patrol. And it was a ways down there, but patrol comes flying. You can hear the sirens and stuff coming. And we're trying to chase him in our undercover cars. And he gets in front of his apartment and the patrol officers show up and he doesn't get upstairs. And they handcuff him, stick him in the patrol car. And so they also have a search warrant, or they're going to write a search warrant for that location. So we have to secure it and wait for the search warrant to be written before we can go in there. Well, before we transport Ben, another officer comes and gets me and says, hey, Ben wants to talk to you. And I said, okay. So I go down there and to the patrol car, open the door. So what's up, Ben? He goes, hey, man, can you do me a favor, Dave? I go, yeah, what's up? He goes, can you bring my wife and kids down here so I can say goodbye? So sure, no problem. So I go and get him and he said goodbye to him. And I think he did, I want to say he did 10 years. I can't remember.
That's a long time.
He did a long time.
Long time, especially when you have kids.
Yeah.
You missed a whole decade of their lives. Yeah.
Right. And it's weird. I guess it's, what do they call it, PTSD or whatever, that you get emotional over certain things, and I don't know why. It gets easier when I tell the stories, but just certain ones. But that was probably my biggest case as an undercover officer, which isn't, there's so many other people out there done so many other things. You got Jay Dobbins, you got The other guy's just recently around. And I watch all this stuff, and I can't remember his name for the life of me now. The undercover FBI guy that he did some big cases with the biker gangs. There's a ton of them.
There was an undercover case where you guys were buying a grenade launcher.
Yeah.
Who is selling grenade launchers, and what is the reason to buy one?
I have no idea why you'd want to buy one, but we wanted one.
Okay.
And so we're working with the FBI, and we're doing this big case. I can't talk a lot about it, but I can talk a little bit about it. And we're basically buying guns up and down, from anywhere from San Paulo to Oakland.
Okay.
And we have mercenaries involved, which are your informants, but they go around making money, and they make a ton of money doing what they do.
Really?
Yeah.
How much do they make? What was the most you've heard of?
Well, he was making over $100,000 a year.
Just snitching on people.
Yeah, and this is
setting
back
people up.
Yeah.
Okay.
And you would never, ever in your life think that they're snitches or undercover cops.
Wow.
And so some of the DEA was involved because we're using some of their undercover cops. And again, they look straight up crooks. I mean, you would never guess that they're undercover cops. So we're buying various guns up and down throughout the Bay Area. The opportunity comes to buy a grenade launcher. So we're going to set this up, and we're working with the DA's office at the time, too. This guy, Sean Pate, he was the lieutenant for their investigations unit. And so me and him had hooked up together, and we're working this case. And we set it all up in front of a Chevy's restaurant. And the car's wired with cameras and sound. And these two guys show up to sell the grenade launcher. And we bought a gun from them before, too, so we know that they could do what they say they're going to do. Well, the undercover officer in this instance was an FBI agent, and he's sitting in the driver's seat. And we're spread out throughout the parking lot and across the street. And you can hear the conversation going on. The two crooks get in the back of the car. The informant's in the front of the car, in the front seat. Well, he gets out so they can do the deal. The crook in the back seat pulls out a Uzi machine gun and points it at the undercover officer's head. Says, "Give me the money." It was only $2,000. Just give me the money. Give me the money. And so he does a great job. He puts it in reverse, lets his feet off the brake, and so the car's rolling, and he's pushing the gun away, saying, "Give me a minute. Let me get it out. You got to give me a minute." Well, while that's going on, everybody's on the radio screaming, "It's a rip. It's a rip." Well, a rip is when the crook's going to try and rip us off.
Yeah.
So as we come swooping in there, I jump out of the car, and I see the informant had reached through the window of the car and grabbed a hold of that gun and was pulling it away from the officer and the crook. And it finally goes around the doorpost, and he yanks it out, and he's holding it. Other guy gets out of the other side, and that turns into a shootout. They're shooting, the FBI agents and the other guy are shooting at each other.
Right, but one of the guys has an Uzi.
Yeah. The Uzi got ripped out of the guy's hand.
Oh, so he wasn't shooting the Uzi?
No. It was another
Then it
gun.
would have been a bloodbath.
Right. But now it was another gun.
Okay.
So I'm thinking, oh, man, I don't have my vest. So I run and get my vest. I come back. I'm in charge of all this. So I hadn't told anybody we're doing anything. The worst thing an undercover operation you can do is tell people what you're going to do. You don't tell your own officers. You don't tell nobody, because then it gets burnt. So I'm on the radio explaining, "Hey, shots fired, Chevy's restaurant, need help, get up here." And I can hear all the sirens coming. And as I'm walking back to the car, I see the informant holding the Uzi. And dreadlocks, gold teeth, tattoos everywhere. So I tell him, "Hey, man, give me that, set that on the ground, go get in the back of the excursion. And just stay there. Don't ever come out until we come get you." because we didn't want the other officers to know what he looked like either. And he's like, okay. And so everybody comes up there, and what I'm not paying attention to was the restaurant was open. And so when it all calmed down, the one guy that was in the shootout had ran through this ravine. So now we got the CHP helicopter, has him nailed down on the side of a mountain and won't let him go. Now I have to try and control all these people that are in this restaurant. There's probably 100 people. They're all staring through the window. Some of them are looking out. So we get through that, go up on the hillside, arrest the other guy, arrest all of them. And when something like that happens, you get sequestered and you have to be held and answer a bunch of questions. But everybody was mad at me because I didn't tell them about the operation. And so I remember telling the chief that we're not supposed to tell you what we're doing. But yeah, that buying that grenade launcher didn't work out. And there was no grenade launcher.
There was no grenade launcher.
Just pictures of it.
Just bluffing the whole time?
We saw pictures of it, yeah.
I was going to say, I've heard a lot of crimes. Growing up in the Bay, you hear of a lot of crimes. You never hear a grenade or a grenade launcher being used in any crimes.
No.
That's something a little different. Maybe out in the Ozarks or something they're using
I know
grenades.
it'd be pretty cool to buy a grenade launcher, but...
Right. I'd buy one.
Right.
With a flamethrower to go with it? Yeah.
Right.
Why not?
Exactly.
Well, you would say that sometimes people get ripped off for drugs and they would call the police to try to report it?
Yep. We would get home invasion calls of, it was, a lot of times it was weed houses. And they would break into houses and hold people at gunpoint and steal all their drugs and money. And then they'd call the police.
Yeah, it's interesting. I've told this story on my show a bunch of times, but I actually dabbled in drug dealing at one point. I bought a kilo of cocaine.
Right.
And the guy who I thought was my friend, who I'd known for years, ended up ripping me off for like $17,000. And I had this moment where I'm like, what do I do? I can't call the police.
Right.
Right. I have to do something violent to try to get this money back. But it was like, I remember thinking like, a crime just occurred and I can't call the police.
Right.
Now, I wasn't stupid enough to do that, but people were actually stupid enough to do this.
Some people are stupid enough to do this.
When you get this phone call and say, hey, someone just stole my drugs,
Yeah.
What do you do in that situation?
Well, they don't actually say it like that. They'll say, hey, there's someone broke into our house and robbed us.
Okay.
And when you get there, you figure out what had happened and what occurred. But there was one guy, 4th and Nevin Park in Richmond was in the Iron Triangle, which was a bad neighborhood, and predominantly black neighborhood. So if you were white and you were in that area, you're probably going to get stopped because you're either lost or you're buying drugs. Mm-hmm. And there was an incident where a guy had showed up there, and he wound up to be a dentist from Marin, this white guy. And the call came out that there's a white guy standing in his underwear in Nevin Park. Well, the people in that area, they know he doesn't belong there either. So they're calling us. So you go there.
Just for everyone listening, hold on. I just want to stop for a second. Marin is like one of the richest areas in the Bay, right? To be a dentist from Marin, you're probably making $500,000 a year, right? So to be in the hood buying drugs and getting stripped down is crazy right now. Go ahead.
And so you go there, and he's standing in his boxers. And what had occurred was he was addicted to crack. And it was back then, it was the big crack, pandemic. And when he got there, they had convinced him to let them use his car to go get the drugs. So he gave them his money and the car. I'm sorry, they didn't give him his money. He gave them the car to go get the drugs.
Okay.
What had happened, we had found out later, was they go and tell their buddies, hey, there's that white dude out there, and he's got money waiting for us to come back with drugs. Go rob him.
So they stole his car, and then they went and robbed him.
Yeah.
Okay.
So his buddies, whoever their buddies were, went back and robbed them. And he said, out of the blue, these guys showed up and pointed guns at me and took all my clothes and all my money and stuff.
They took his clothes even.
And I don't want my wife to know. That was the other. Okay.
Well, crack will do that to you, man.
Right.
Crack will do that to you.
Yeah. Yep. That was a funny one.
Well, you talked about this story, which is actually kind of interesting. There was a situation where there was a young boy whose grandfather had whooped him with a belt. and the mother had called the police.
Yes.
But there was more to the story.
Yes.
So what happens?
So I was fairly new at the time. I was still in patrol, and the call comes out. Child abuse call, basically. And so I go out there to it, and I talk to the mom, and the mom says that my father whipped my son with a belt when he picked him up from school. And I said, well, how bad? And she goes, pretty bad. So I said, let me see. It was just a young kid. He was in second grade, so I can't remember how old he was.
Second grade?
Yeah, 8 or I can't remember.
I was about 7 years old.
Yeah, about 7 or 8.
Yeah.
And he had some welts on his butt, and he had some welts below his butt on his hamstring area behind, on his back of his legs. And so I said, okay. I said, well, where's your father now? Well, he dropped him off and went home. I said, okay. I said, well, this is going to be, above me. I need to call the detectives and let them know what's going on and what they want me to do.
Right. CPS probably gets called.
Right. And CPS will get involved.
Yeah.
And so I called the juvenile detectives, and they said, well, is he there? I said, no. And they said, well, can you see if you can get him there? So I talked to the mom, and the mom says, oh, yeah, I'm sure he would probably come there. I said, well, let me call him. So she gives me his number, and I call him. I said, hey, sir, I said, we're here. This is what happened with your grandson. He goes, yeah, I did that. I whipped his ass. I said, okay. I said, well, you need to come and talk to us, and some of the juvenile detectives will be here in a little bit. He goes, I'll be right there. He goes, did she tell you what he did? I'm on the phone. I'm like, no, she didn't. I'll be right there. I said, okay. So I wait 5-10 minutes, and he shows up. Nice guy. Very polite, very a little irritated. Now he's agitated that, the mom called the police on him. And he walks up and he looks at me, he goes, so she didn't tell you what he did? I said, no. And he looks at her and says, tell the officer what he did. Explain the whole story. And so she goes, well, you still don't need to beat my child like that. And so he goes, no. What he did was in school, he stands up on his desk, pull his pants down, and tells the teacher to suck my dick. So the school takes him to the principal's office and calls me. I have to leave work to come pick him up and bring him home. And I whipped his butt. That's exactly what happened. That changed the whole story to me. That changed the whole, to everybody, the detectives, the whole bit. And they took the reports. He never got arrested or nothing. But I remember one of the detectives talking to the mom and explaining, hey, he could go to prison for a long time. You're not gonna, you got somebody looking after your child that wants him to grow up right.
Well, yeah, because the mom would have to press charges.
Right.
Or I guess the DA could take it on.
The DA could take it without.
Right, but if the mom's not cooperating, there's no point.
Right.
Okay, so listen, I don't believe in hitting kids. I have kids myself.
Right,
I've never hit them.
right.
But, if that happens, I may consider it.
Right.
I may actually consider hitting my kids
exactly,
if they did something as outlandish as that.
and it's, do you hit him with a belt? I don't know. I mean, and the kid's squirming around, he's going to get hit elsewhere besides just the butt. But
yeah.
I'm not saying it fully excused him of what he did, but you understood it.
Well, did you ever follow the Tory Lanez story?
No.
So Tory Lanez was a rapper from Canada. He was dating this girl named Megan Thee Stallion, a popular rapper. They got into a big altercation, a big fight. He pulled out a gun and shot and ended up shooting her in the foot. And he gets found guilty in court. He gets 10 years in California State Prison.
Okay.
So while he's locked up, and he's in protective custody, right? So he's around rapists and so forth like that.
Right.
There was an inmate that he was locked up with who I believe killed his underage girlfriend.
Okay.
Right. So this inmate had a girlfriend on the outside.
Right.
And it's a little fuzzy, but the story was that during a visiting day, Tory had flirted with the girlfriend.
Okay.
So depending on who you talk to about the story, the Mexican inmate went to the black car and explained to him the situation, and they gave him a green light. So he stabbed Tory a lot of times.
Wow.
To the point where he had to be airlifted to like Lancaster to an
Okay.
actual hospital because both of his
Right.
lungs had collapsed. I saw the video.
Right.
It looked like, I think he got stabbed like 20-something times or
Wow.
something like that.
Wow.
Do you see this type of thing happen?
You would see inmates stab other inmates, like if they found out they're a child molester or something,
Huh.
they would get stabbed.
But would these people get on the main yard?
Yeah.
They just
could get
hope
out
that
of the
no one
main yard.
found out?
Yeah, just hope nobody found out. There was a lot of them out there.
Okay.
A lot of them.
And you talked about this before. Some of these inmates really have full-blown girlfriends
Yes.
on the outside, and they're doing 30 years?
Yeah, they'll be doing life, and they got the most beautiful girl
Really?
in the world. This girl could have anybody they want. I'd work overtime a lot in visiting, so it was an easy overtime gig, and they would come in and they're beautiful, and they're visiting, and we could never figure out. You always have the bad boy syndrome, right? Women get attracted to the bad boys for some reason.
Yeah, but a
Some
bad
do,
boy
some
who's
don't.
actually free.
Right.
Like a bad boy doing life in prison, I don't quite understand the appeal because they couldn't actually have like sex or anything, right?
If they got married, they could go
They got
and
married.
have conjugal visits.
So were they
yes.
married a lot of times?
Some of them would be married, yes.
and doing life in prison and have a wife.
Right.
And once a month they'd go to like the trailer?
I can't remember the schedule, but it was about once a month, once every other month, depending on how many they had to schedule for these trailers. They'd have trailers in a big fenced off yard, and you just lived in it for a few days or a week.
Okay.
And yeah, I don't understand that either. Unless I would always think, well, at least they know where their guy's at, and it's not going nowhere.
Yeah. So, but how many of these guys actually have boyfriends in the prison while having lives on the outside?
I'm sure a lot do. And it brings up another subject with Richard Ramirez. When Richard Ramirez was in San Quentin, I would see this one lady, and I'm not putting her out there. People know her name's Cindy. She would always visit him, and it wound up that she was one of the jurors on his trial that committed him to death. Well, when I went to work at Richmond Police Department, I walked in there, and this girl, Cindy, that would come visit Richard Ramirez, was in there working as a volunteer. And I would see her all the time at San Quentin. So I had asked her, I said, what's the deal with you and Richard Ramirez? And she said that she had just felt sorry for him and wanted to try and take care of him. And it took her a while to figure out that he was truly nuts before she cut all ties with him. And she still, last I heard, she still works at Richmond Police Department as a volunteer chaplain. Nice lady, really. I think she really meant well, just too much.
Yeah, I mean, I guess
little
every
crazy.
relationship is unique.
Right.
If you
Right.
really want to have, well, but I've heard of situations like this. Actually, someone really prominent that I know, a female who was in the industry, got involved with a guy that was doing a bunch of time. He gets out and, he starts chasing after all the young girls.
Right.
A lot of times, sometimes you have these beautiful women, but I
Right.
think more often than not, you have the really unattractive,
Right.
extremely overweight, women who really are not getting a lot of men approaching them
Right.
on the outside. And you have this guy who's locked up, who's writing you love letters
Yeah.
all day long.
And you're right. I would say the majority of them were like that.
And you know what else I heard? So, for example, Hector Bravo has been on my show a couple of times.
Right.
What he would say, which is interesting, is that you'd have these inmates and they'd have like 6, 7 girlfriends on the outside. So they would write the exact same letter to all their girlfriends and mail them out at the same time. But now the prison has to go through every letter that goes out.
Right.
And what the guards would do is they would purposely mix up the letters. So the letter to Julie would say Barbara, and then the Barbara letter would say Cindy, and so forth. So these girls would get these letters with the wrong names on them
Right.
and create chaos.
Right.
You know?
And that's true. I've heard.
You've heard
things
about
like that.
this?
I've heard about it. I've never physically seen it. I never worked the mail room or anything. But you would hear stories like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's and they would have 6, 7 different girlfriends. You'd work in the adjustment center. You'd take guys to the visiting room, and there would be a different girl there visiting them.
Yeah. I mean, that's actually how R. Kelly got caught up,
Oh, okay. Yeah.
because I've interviewed him in prison.
Right.
And he had like a couple of girls that were really like down for him.
Right.
But then he was talking to other girls while in prison.
Okay.
and somebody actually got a copy of that audio of him, playing lovey-dovey with some
Right.
other girl, and
Right.
sent it to one of the girls that he was actually dealing with, and she turned on him
Right.
and ended up testifying against him,
Right.
which ended up kind of cementing his whole prison situation.
Wow. Yeah, and I
Yeah.
can believe that. And it's funny because the inmates or they're in prison. They're just guys. They're just people. I always say people are people, right? And they messed up and they're doing their time. And I would say the majority of them, you would get along fine with them. They never give you a problem. There's no problems with anybody. The easiest ones to get along with were the lifers. And then when they got out of prison, I would run into a lot of them on the street,
Really?
and I would not have a problem. There's a guy named Frank Coffee. When I worked at the adjustment center, he'd clean my showers for me. I still talk to him to this day. We'll text each other, hey, Merry Christmas. You just build relationships with guys you get along with, even though you're not supposed to. But they would, most of them just made a mistake,
Yeah.
a bad mistake, and some of them need to stay there. Some of them need to never come out.
Yeah, look, I have friends who killed people.
Yeah.
Shit happens. There's reasons
Right.
behind everything.
Right. One of my best friends did 12 years.
Yeah, exactly. Now, people who are still actively killing people, I'm not friends with.
Hope
and
not, yeah.
I have friends that are former kingpin drug dealers.
Right.
They're not selling drugs anymore.
Right.
That's where my line is drawn.
Life goes on. And
Life goes on. We make mistakes. I've bought drugs before. I've done
Right.
stupid shit, and I went on to turn my life around, and I ended up okay. So I don't feel like people should be judged for the rest of their life for their worst moment.
Right. And that's how I believe. I believe people can learn from their mistakes and move on. Some can't. Some can. I think working in the prison first helped me a lot. Working on the street, it helped me. I mean, I'm not shy to say that a lot of police officers I don't care for them. I don't. They have no experience. They don't understand the authority they have, and they try to use it and abuse it. And you do as you're told. They don't take the time to build respect that they need to. And I think working in the prison taught me how to deal with people.
Well, final question before I let you go. Because when you look at the prison systems around the world, they're very different.
Right.
In certain European countries, rehabilitation is the main focus. You go to like Sweden and stuff like that, where people have their own rooms, they have keys to their own cells, they have TVs and video game systems and nice parks and so forth. Then you go to the US or you go to places like Mexico, and it's really more about punishment.
Correct.
Now, if you had the ability to change the prison system with one major change, if you had the power to do that, to just sign a piece of paper and say, from now on, all the U.S. prisons are like this, based on my experience as being a prison guard at 2 different prisons, what would you change?
I think I would change the whole model to where it's all three. You'll have prison for punishment, and you have the rehabilitation centers like they do, and then open back up the mentally ill housing stuff that people need.
So that's all gone?
For the most part, they still deal with them in prison, but all your mental institutions have closed.
Yeah.
Not all of them, but
They call them
most of them.
J-Cats.
Yeah, J-Cats. In prison, we call them J-Cats. And people make excuses, and they allow and accept excuses for people's crimes. And sometimes there's no excuse. You need to be punished for what you did. Now, if you have an addiction problem and stuff, I think you should be given the opportunity to fix that. And if you can, great, because then that's going to solve the majority of your problem. I mean, I got friends that have been in prison for years. I got a gym that one of the guys that helps me run it was a Norteño for years, and we let people do their Narcotics Anonymous classes in one of our offices at the gym, and then I give them free gym memberships because it keeps them off the street instead of going back to prison. I think they should have that opportunity, but I don't think it's for everybody, no. And I think the state, or at least state of California, tries to do that for everybody, and you just can't do that.
What do you mean?
Making everything a rehabilitation. So San Quentin's a rehabilitation center, and it's almost to the point. and again, I don't have this proven facts, but it's almost to the point to where if somebody does something, oh, well, I was addicted to alcohol. Okay, well then we won't give you the death penalty, or we'll knock some years off and you go to this rehab classes. And some can deal with it and are better, and others just go back and commit the crimes that they were committing before with no punishment. You know, it's one of those fine lines that I'm not sure we'll ever find an answer to.
Yeah, I mean, there is no right answer because every individual is different. Just because rehabilitation worked with one person doesn't mean it won't work with this person.
Correct.
Because this person just knows how to game the system better.
Correct.
As opposed to this person who really wants to become sober, they're totally fine.
Right.
So, yeah. Well, Darren, appreciate you coming in. Hell of a story. And,
yeah, thank you.
You know, being around all these high-profile criminals that we all read about,
right.
actually seeing them in real life
Right.
and interacting with them. You know, and the majority of them, I'm glad that they're locked up. I don't believe in freeing everybody.
Those ones needed to be locked up. I mean, there's,
you know,
I mean, we didn't talk about all of them, but there's a lot.
Yeah,
that
the Night Stalker needed to stay right where he was. We did not want him coming out early.
Yes, he did.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm 100% in agreement with that. Yeah.
Well, appreciate you coming in. All the best.
Yeah, thank you.
Until next time.
Appreciate
Peace.
it. Thank you.